He was born into a world of magic, but he didn't have any magical skills of his own, so he decided he was going to become the strongest magician by taking out every monster in the dungeon with his sword. The story starts with this dude named Will living in a world where magic is like the holy grail, but damn, my man got the short end of the stick because he ain't got no magical talent. Still, they enrolled his ass in one of them fancy-ass academies, but the problem is how the hell is a dude with zero magic gonna make it in a university like this? He decides to tackle this problem by perfecting his skills with the sword and heads off to high-level dungeons, regularly scraping with giant beasts, shooting magic spells at him, which he dodges and uses his incredible speed and skills with his sword to utterly stunt on the monster and slice it in half with a single slash. That was just a warm-up though, as he realizes he's got to handle a bunch more of these creatures if he wants to make it out of that dungeon alive. But that ain't no biggie for him because he's done it plenty of times before. The next morning, he drags his tired ass to class, where a professor named Edward teaching them about the basics of alchemy and how to produce sulfur, which helps in the creation of explosives. Edward notices Will nodding off in the back, so he calls his name, but unaware Will keeps snoring till Edward shouts his damn name. Will jumps up, all surprised and shit. Edward calls him to the front and tells him to show the class what they just learned. Ain't no escape for Will, you gotta step up in front of everybody and demonstrate. Edward tells him it's super easy and all he's gotta do is produce some flames and sulfur will be created. Will's hands are shaking as he pulls out his wand and starts chanting the spell for flames. But to his disappointment, not even a damn spark comes out of that wand. The whole class starts laughing at him like he's some kind of stand-up comedian. But the teacher shuts them up real quick. Edward looks at Will with disgust, wondering how the hell a theory genius like him can flop so hard in practical magic, and he wonders how Will even got selected for this academy. Then out of nowhere, this fiery-haired dude named Tsue whips out his wand, all confident-like, and aims it at the stuff on the desk. He busts out his flame magic, straight up torching everything and creating sulfur, while poor Will hides behind the fire like a scaredy cat. Edward tells Tsue not to do any shit like that without permission, as he immediately creates a huge crystal of sulfur with his magic spell. He starts preaching about how magic is the most important thing in this world and how mages are straight-up heroes. According to him, if you want to survive at this academy, you need to be damn good at magic, and fools who have no idea how to control magic should simply leave the academy. After class, Tsue and his crew walk over to Will, trying to embarrass the dude. They say he can only handle weak-ass dungeon monsters. But then Will's childhood friend Kali steps in like a boss, telling Chen to back off as he's much nicer than him and his group. Chen gets a little flustered but brushes it off, talking about how kindness and hard work won't mean shit without magic. Then he bounces with his goons. Will and Kali start walking together and she tells him not to stress too much. But Will's used to this bullying crap as he looks up at the sky and says it looks beautiful. Turns out a few years back, humans were trapped in darkness, scared of some evil spirits casting shadows all over the damn world. But luckily, 5 badass mages known as the Mangiavander stepped up and fought those evil spirits. They kicked their asses and freed the humans, showing them what the real sky looked like. These mages were known as the Mangiavander, and that title now passes down to the most powerful mages of this world. Will remembers a promise he made to his childhood friend Elfaria, who used to read him storybooks about the Mangiavander, and they made a pact with each other that they'd become the Mangiavander one day. Elfaria kept her end of the bargain as she had crazy talent and rose up the ranks quickly, becoming the youngest Mangiavander in history and started living in the Divine Tower. While Will's just barely hanging on, far from average, trying to hold onto that dream and promise. Later that same day, Will rolls up to meet Professor Wagner, but damn, this dude starts straight up yelling when he finds out that this Harry Potter copycat went solo into level 7 in the dungeons. Wagner warns him that one day he's gonna end up dead. Will drops to the ground and apologizes like crazy, but asks if he'll get credit for it or not. Wagner lets out a sigh and tosses him 2 credits for his troubles. Will starts celebrating, but then Wagner asks him if he's still clinging onto that Vander dream. Wagner explains that if Will wants even a tiny chance of becoming a Vander, he gotta get into the Upper Institute. To do that, he needs a boatload of credits in writing, spell work, and fighting. But if my man can't use spells, he ain't getting no spell work credits. So no matter how many credits he racks up in the other areas, he won't qualify. Will says no matter what, he's gonna try. So Wagner tells him he gotta graduate first, but as far as he knows, Will needs 4 more credits by the end of the week. This news shocks the hell out of Will, and he starts hunting down monsters that can give him those 4 credits. Wagner mentions this monster called Baskerville on the 6th floor that ain't been defeated yet. Will gets all hyped up and hugs his teacher. But little does he know, Tsue overhears the whole thing and decides to hit up the dungeons himself. He wants to kill that monster before Will does so he can boot him out of the academy for lacking credits. Later that evening, Will enters the damn cave with his sidekick Kiki, telling her to use her nose to sniff out the monster. But Kiki ain't feeling it because the last time when Will fought at Baskerville, she got straight up roasted by its breath. On the other side, Shingen and his crew step into the 6th floor, all determined to find that beast before Will does, so he gets kicked out. One of his lackeys with some pink feminist hair asks if it's a good idea for just 3 mages to venture in, but Shingen shoots him a mean look, claiming he's one of the best mages in the class and can handle it. He's walking with a bunch of racist angry thoughts in his head and tells his crew to use their scan magic to track down the beast's location. When suddenly, this massive beast pops up and straight up decks the spiky-haired dude so hard he becomes a freaking pancake on the wall. Shin's in disbelief, frozen in place, while the feminist starts shrieking like a banshee out of sheer terror. Will hears the screams and springs into action, hauling ass towards the noise because he's worried someone's getting messed up. He turns a corner and spots Shan on the ground, blasting fire at the monster. But this creature ain't phased one bit. Will recognizes it as the Evil Sentinel, a super tough monster worth 10 credit scores. He wonders what the hell it's doing in this dungeon level. He realizes that Shan's magic ain't jack against this beast. It just brushes off those flame blasts and keeps coming for the scared shitless boy. Will considers helping him out, but then he remembers all the times this jerk mocks him for no reason. That makes him want to shut his eyes and pretend he didn't see a thing. But then he thinks about Elfaria, who always said he was the kindest person she knew. Shigen gave him a pair of glasses as a gift. That reminder brings him back to his true self, and he puts on the glasses just as the monster raises its weapon to finish off that cocky brat once and for all. Will blocks the monster's attack just in time, pushing it away and saving Chen's sorry ass. Meanwhile, back at the academy, Edward barges into Wagner's room and demands that he send his familiar straight into the dungeons. Turns out, Shingen and his lackey snuck into the 6th floor without permission. Wagner realizes what's going down but tells Edward not to sweat it because Will's on that same floor too. Back in the damn dungeon, Will keeps going head-to-head with the monster, blocking its attacks, dodging like a boss, and slicing off a finger with a swift slash to its arm. The monster gets all pissed off and tries to strike back, but Will's moving through the air like a freaking eagle, dodging that shit. Finally, the monster manages to land a hit on Will, but my man blocks it with his sword. He gets blasted back, and the monster starts chucking rocks at him. But Will slices right through them like it's nothing. He's jumping all around that monster, landing on its back and straight up stabbing it through the neck. The monster starts flailing around while Chian's jaw is on the damn floor witnessing Will's skills. Meanwhile, back at the academy, Edward is also losing his mind seeing this, while Wagner says Will is an outcast because he ain't got magic, but his strength is superhuman for a mage. Dude's tough as hell like a dwarf and his brain's so damn sharp, he can learn an attack pattern just by glancing at someone. They watch as Will chops off a monster's arm like it's nothing, then casually strolls over to this giant-ass sword on the ground. Will effortlessly picks up that beast of a blade, and Wagner tells Edward that in a world full of magic and wizards, was the only Dan warrior. The monster shoots an energy beam from its mouth, but Will blocks it with the giant sword, then slashes the hell out of that monster, slicing it up into tiny pieces that drop to the ground lifeless. Will walks over and helps chin up, and the dude's still in shock. Edward's mind is blown and he's yelling at Wagner, saying a person without magic can never surpass a magician. Then he storms out of the room all pissed off. Wagner knows Edward's hella mad right now, but he also knows that Will's story is gonna become a freaking legend as he will turn the whole damn world upside down by making Wistoria the only place where a wand and a sword meet. 5 years back, Willie was the ultimate joke at that whole school due to his lack of magic. And apparently the only reason they even let his sorry ass enroll in the school was because he was tight with Elfaria. But once she became the Magiavander, the school didn't need to fake being nice to him anymore. Willie had to put up with all that shade, but it didn't stop him from hustling hard to graduate no matter what. Wagner rolled with Willie to see the headmistress, and no doubt she had her doubts about whether Willie had what it takes for this school. But once she hands him a sword and puts him to the test, Willie straight up counters every single one of her fire spells in a split second. She's blown away and says Willie can stay in the school. Wagner's hella surprised because he didn't think it would be so damn easy to convince her. Willie ain't got no magic, but the headmistress thinks it'll be a blast having someone like Willie around. Willie asks the headmistress if he can roll with Elfaria again if he gets strong enough, and she tells him straight up he's got to grind like crazy and not let any challenges shake him. But even then, there ain't no guarantees. But as Willie bounces, she drops a line about being excited to see what he can pull off. Fast forward to now, Willie's chilling in Wagner's class while he schools everyone on the Tower of Magic. Climbing that tower means moving up to the Upper Institute and reaching the top floor to become a Magiavander. Right now, there are 2 ways to become a Magiavander. Either come up with some new mind-blowing magic or rack up over 7,000 credits in this school. But let's keep it real. creating new magic is hella rare, so most students focus on earning credits. But since this is a remedial class, everyone in here is on the verge of flunking out, especially Willy. Once the classes wrap up, Kali links up with Willy and asks how he's holding up because Wagner's remedial classes are notorious for being strict as hell. Willy agrees that Wagner don't play around, but honestly, he's grateful that Wagner even bothers with remedial classes because most professors wouldn't give a damn. As they turn the corner, they catch some commotion going down, so they eavesdrop and hear Qian's crew giving him mad props for taking down the evil sentinel. They ain't questioning how he survived, but word is, when Mars woke up, all he saw was Qian standing tall next to a defeated evil sentinel. That means Qian must have straight up whooped its ass. Everybody is thinking Qian's the bomb for taking down that mega powerful evil sentinel. But deep down, Qian knows he's fronting because it was actually Willy who wrecked that monster. Just when Qian spots Willy strolling by, he takes that as a personal insult. So he marches up to Willy and starts throwing hands, trying to start a fight all over again. But now it's way harder for Qian to see Willy as some weakling because he knows Willy could straight up knock him out with one hit, but he's just choosing not to. Qian lets go of Willy's jacket and leaves, not saying a damn word. Once Qian's gone, Kali asks Willy what the hell went down between them because something definitely went down. At the same damn time, Edward busts into Headmistress Cauldron's office like he owns the place, demanding that Willy get expelled pronto. Cauldron asks why Edward suddenly wants to expel Willy out of the blue. He's already in his 6th and final year at the academy, so they can't just boot him for no reason. Edward trying to argue that Willy can't stay in the school because he is a warrior, not a mage, and he ain't having no one without magic trying to outshine the mages. Cauldron pulls out Willy's records and points out that his grades are off the charts, his writing is on point, and his magic reports are mad insightful. So he can't use magic, but he's the damn definition of a perfect student. If Willy's dream is to become a Magiavander, Cauldron believes he could excel in any damn profession he chooses. It is the Academy's duty to produce smart-ass folks for the fated day. But Edward is saying Willy's ambition to become a Magiavander is the problem and Cauldron feeling him on that. So she comes up with a plan. She tells Edward to personally test Willy, and if Willy can't pass Edward's test, then he's free to kick him out if he wants. Edward asks if Cauldron is sure she want to leave Willy's fate in the hands of his #1 hater. And Cauldron says she's fine with it since it won't make a difference. If anything, she thinks it gonna be more entertaining to have the Dark Viper Mage himself test Willy. Meanwhile, Willy getting ready for his next class and asks Kali to help him pop open his locker. She happily does that, and he apologizes for always making her do it because he ain't got no magic skills. She's cool with it, but then she peeps Willy's sword in his locker and asks if he's still training with it. Willy says he is, but he couldn't get the green light to use it while he's at school and his roommate back in the dorm won't let him do anything risky. Later on, he and Kali roll to the library to study together, and Willy's going all in even though he already aced this shit before. Kali tells him to chill since he's already killing it in writing, but Willy says he gotta keep hustling because he can't afford to drop a single credit. Plus, he enjoys learning history from the perspectives of other races, especially because he can relate to the dwarves. They went to war against badass mages, but they never backed down despite the tough-ass challenge. Right then, Kali spots a white strand of hair on Willy's dome, and she says it's probably because he's pushing himself too hard. She offers to yank it out for him even though Willy says she doesn't have to. But she's really all about doing it. Just when they're getting flirty, Edward sneaks up behind Willy and tells him to meet him solo in the spell hall because he got some shit to handle. A little while later, Willy shows up at the spell hall, and Edward drops the bomb that he's hooking Willy up with a special remedial class, so he better be grateful. Willy can't believe Edward's offering him a remedial class, but that just proves he ain't up to no good. Dude wants to see what Willy's really made of, so he shoots a warning shot to let Willy know it's a damn serious. Edward says if Willy can land a single strike on him, he'll score 5 spell work credits, but if he fails, he's getting expelled on the spot. Edward also makes it clear that Willy can't say no to this test, so he starts casting a spell to take Willy out. Meanwhile, Cauldron summons Wagner to her office and apologizes for the short notice, but she thinks Wagner should know what Edward's up to. She casts a spell to show him the test Edward's giving Willy, and she forbids Wagner from interfering for any reason. She thinks it's only fair that Edward gets his request granted since Wagner got the same privilege to watch over Willy. But Wagner thinks it's too damn cruel to let Edward, of all people, be the one to test Willy because this dude almost became a Magiavander. He might have failed, but he still got power equivalent to one, so Willy's in some serious danger right now. So far, Willy's been dodging Edward's spells, but Edward's only been using weak-ass black magic. Willy can't believe the insane power Edward's showing. Willy gotta find a way to fight back, so he tries sneaking up behind Edward and landing a kick, but Edward easily blocks it with a shield spell. That shield is too damn strong for Willy to break without a weapon, and Edward calls him hopeless for thinking a kick could penetrate a magic shield. Then Edward straight up blasts him away, and Willy starts to worry that there might be no way for him to win. Edward's just too damn strong for him right now. Edward tells Willie he'll limit himself to 2 spells, one for attacking with fire and one for defending against Willie's weak-ass moves. But even with just 1 attack spell, someone who's a master at that shit can outshine someone who's learned 1,000. At the same damn time, Edward's casting his fire spell, and Willie knows he's screwed if he gets hit with that. So he starts hauling ass, trying to run away, but Edward still manages to blast him no matter what. And you can tell Edward's enjoying this shit because he's got that smirk like he's conducting a symphony with Willie's screams. Willie eventually falls to the ground, realizing he can't beat Edward like this. But if he had his sword, at least he could hold his ground against Edward. Outside the spell hall, Collie's been stashing her stuff in her locker, and she's hella worried about Willie because Edward asking him to come alone for remedial classes can't be a good sign. Out of nowhere, Kiki comes running in all covered in Willie's blood, desperately trying to get to his sword in his locker. So Collie realizes some real messed up shit went down with Willie, and she pops open his locker so they can grab his sword and go help him out. As Willie's lying on the ground, Edward's strolling over to him, talking about how Willie ain't never gonna be a Magiavander if he can't top and right here. Magic always reigns supreme, even back when dwarves were at war with the mages, fighting against an army of 10,000 dwarves. But just 1 mage was enough to wipe them all out. The sword ain't never gonna compare to the wand, but even with the odds stacked against him, Willie still wanna be a Magiavander, and he'll do whatever it takes to make it happen. Edward can't understand why Willie going to such extremes, so he asks if Willie got some noble-ass goal he trying to achieve. So Willie tells him it's because he wanna be by the side of the girl he loves, but Edward thinks that's a dumbass reason. It might sound stupid to Edward, but Willie made a promise to Elfaria, and he gonna do whatever it takes to watch the sunset with her. Right then, Collie shows up at the spell hall and tosses Willie's sword to him. And now that he's finally armed, Willie is able to counter Edward's fire spell. Edward all shocked that Willie managed to cut through his spell, but he realizes it's because Willie's sword is some special shit. Still, he is hell-bent on proving that Willie ain't no match for a mage. Willie is scared shitless of Edward's flames, and if he had a choice, he would have bounced from this fight long ago. But facing Edward is the only way for Willie to move forward. So he charges at Edward, dodging all his attacks, and now that he is close enough, he slices through Edward's barrier and scratches his cheek. Edward gotta admit that Willie passed the damn test, so he gives him his 5 credits and walks off. Willie collapses on the ground from exhaustion, and Collie runs up to congratulate him on his win, but he straight up passes out. Cauldron praised Willie's performance, and the analyzer Wagner said his strategy of diving into the attack to close the distance and attack from the blind spot was straight up brilliant. And what's even more impressive is that his sword strike was strong enough to break through Edward's shield. So maybe Willie got what it takes to be a Magiavander after all. Willie starts reminiscing about the time Elfaria took off for the tower. Before she left, he promised her he'd climb that tower one day even if he couldn't use magic. He swore he'd find a way to be with her, and when he did, they'd watch the sunset together. He made her that promise, and she replied with teary eyes and a smile, saying she'd always wait for him. Then she left, and Willie couldn't hold back his tears. He tells Professor Wagner, who's standing behind him, that this is gonna be the last time he cries like that. Next thing we know, we see Willie hustling, delivering newspapers in the city to make ends meet. He bumps into a dude named Dunnan who gives him some encouragement, saying he'll catch Willie at Gina's spot tomorrow. Willie keeps moving and almost trips on some stairs, but he manages to keep his balance and uses his OP skills to save the newspapers from falling except for one. He grabs that stray newspaper and starts reading it, only to find out that Elfaria did create 12 new types of magic spells. He thinks to himself that she's putting in that work, and it motivates him to do the same. Then he notices that Elfaria has placed an order with the academy. The scene switches to his dorm room where he asks Rosti if he can whip up a magic item for him. Rosti's wondering why he's in such a rush. While Willie changing his clothes, he tells him that Elfaria has put in an order, and he's going to skip classes to head into the labyrinth and gather ice cores from the Frost Walkers. He explains that she needs a bunch of magical catalysts, and the students will get paid for however many they can gather. He lets Rosti know that he's going to need that magic item so he can explore the 4th floor. So when Rosti sees the excitement in Willie's eyes, he can't say no. He hands him the magic item and mentions he's made some upgrades since last time. Willie thanks him, and before taking off, Rosti tosses him a piece of bread for breakfast. Later on, he explains how the mage Queen Mercedes once said that everything comes from the dungeon, and she encouraged everyone to conquer it by using their knowledge. So we got Willie making his way to the 4th floor of the dungeon, and he peeps a bunch of students going at it with the Frost Walkers. He figures it's all because of Elfaria's orders, and he's impressed by how she can rally so many folks with just one command. He spots Shin in the mix too, blasting the Frost Walkers with his fire spells. Shin's thinking these small-time enemies ain't gonna make him stronger, and he remembers how strong Willie was when he took on the Sentinel. Willie can sense Cheyenne's power and his thirst for blood, and he knows he won't be able to score any Frost Walkers in this spot, so he keeps going deeper into the dungeon and comes across some monsters attacking a female student. He swoops in and takes him out in a flash, so quick the girl can't even process what went down. She finally notices Willie and realizes what she saw wasn't magic, it was some badass sword play. Willie checks if she's alright, and she nervously says she's good. She thanks him for saving her, and he introduces himself. The girl introduces herself as Iris Churchill, a fourth-year student. Then the scene switches to Professor Wagner teaching a class at the academy, and we see a bunch of students skipping out because of Elfaria's orders. He tells the students that in this world, creating new magic is such a huge accomplishment that it lets the creator advance to the tower without any conditions. He explains that new magic often gets named after its creator, like the spell Dax Darbicans named after the ancient mage Darbicans. He tells the students that if they can create new magic, that'll leave their mark in history. The students think it sounds easy, but they know it ain't that simple. Rose brings up the news they read earlier about Elfaria creating 12 new spells, saying it must be mind-blowing. The professor says it's an unprecedented achievement that nobody else has done, and Elfaria might just be the greatest mage in the history of the Dan world because of it. The whole class starts wondering if this means ice magic is the top dog now, and they start thinking about joining the ice faction. Kali thinks Willie's childhood friend is amazing, and the whole academy's buzzing because of her. And Rose can't help but wonder if she's feeling jealous of Elfaria, because she's afraid Willie might be taken away by her. Kali gets all worked up hearing that, and the professor gives them a scolding for causing a commotion. Kali starts wondering if Willie went to the dungeon today just for Elfaria's sake. Meanwhile, back in the dungeon, Iris realizes that Willie's the bookworm with no magical skills she's heard about. Willie feels a bit offended by that, and he learns that Iris is a fourth-year student. He starts thinking if his lack of magic talent bothers her, but she tells him without a care that she can't look down on her savior. She says he might not be able to use magic, but he's got his own talent, and she respects that. Willie's confused by her laid-back attitude towards him, and he wonders if she's here because of Elfaria's orders too. Iris confirms it and says she wants to help out Magia Vander and do her part in holding up the sky. Willie explains that what Iris said ain't no exaggeration. He goes on to say that the folks in this world have never seen the real sky. The sky they see now is a massive barrier put up by the Magia Vander with their powerful magic. Legend has it that if the barrier falls, darkness will swallow the world and a catastrophe will begin. The students ain't just clearing orders from the tower because they admire the Magia Vander. They believe they're doing their part in holding up the sky. Then Iris tells him she's actually met Elfaria. She explains it happened when she was all alone in the dungeon, surrounded by monsters. Willie wonders if she's got a habit of getting surrounded by monsters. Iris says back then she was in a dire situation and had accepted her grim fate. But that Elfaria freezes all the monsters in an instant, helps her up, and tells her to be careful next time. Iris gets all excited remembering that, and she mentions with sparkling eyes that they had a long chat after that. That's when Kiki notices something, and Willie goes to check it out while Iris keeps rambling. She mentions she wants to help Elfaria, but she ain't found a single Frost Walker. She thinks maybe the other students already took them all down. Her searching ability ain't finding nothing either, so she asks Willie what he's up to. Willie tells Iris that Frostwalkers leave behind ice shards on their tracks, but usually those shards are like 0.5 to 1 millimeter in size. But my man notices a shard that's twice as big. He figures there's a massive Frostwalker up ahead, and maybe in a spot her searching ability can't reach. Iris is wondering how the hell Willie knows all this when he can't even use magic, and Willie tells her magic is cool and all, but it ain't everything, especially in a dungeon. He says he can make up for his lack of magic with his experience and wisdom. Then he gets his magic item ready to go. But suddenly Willie peeps that the Frostwalker is chilling on the freaking ceiling, and my man saves Iris when it tries to attack them. Turns out this ain't just any Frostwalker, it's a Frost Rex. And Iris breaks it down for us, saying these beasts are like advanced versions of Frostwalkers. The monster starts whirling at them, and Iris lets it slip that this bad boy is worth 6 credits, and it's the boss of the floor they are on. So this monster starts throwing beams at them, but Willie is dodging them like a boss with Iris right beside him. Then he puts Iris down and tries to go head-to-head with the Frost Rex, but Iris stops him and says physical attacks don't work on that monster. She spills that this monster is also known as a dwarf killer and can freeze your ass with just one touch. But Willie, all confident and shit, tells her not to worry because he's beating this thing plenty of times before. The monster tries another beam attack, but Willie is dodging that shit too, and he slips under the monster. This beast can't find him, so it starts attacking all over the place. Iris and Kiki are dodging its wild swings. Meanwhile, Willie's magic item is sticking to the monster, and he uses the wire tied to it to wrap the thing up. And he explains the Frost Rex is weak against fire and explosions. The monster tries to freeze his ass, but Willie lights the wire on fire, which sets off the bomb tied at the end, and boom. The monster gets blown to pieces, and Willie thinks that Rossi's magic items are the real deal. Then Iris' whole vibe changes. She gets all serious and realizes there's a big difference between the rumors and what's really going on with this snow talent. She's wondering how the hell she should report all this, and Willie suggests they just bounce because they got what they came for. So Iris switches back to her happy self and agrees with him. The scene then cuts to Iris strutting into a room inside the tower called Mercedes Callas, and she's changing her look as she walks. We find out she was undercover in the academy to scout out talented magicians. She enters a room where 4 out of the 5 Magiavander are gathered. She wonders if she's interrupting something, but this dude named Carriot says it's all good because if the barrier was breached, the whole world would be toast by now. Tsue thinks the celestial hosts are peeping at them from the other side, but they ain't got the numbers or the strength to take them on. Eleanor says they need elite mages for the fated day or else all that lore will turn into reality. They ask the Watcher if she found anyone worth recruiting. Iris tells them that in her search, she found this no-talent dude who's actually worth bringing in. She explains his name's Willie. She suggests they bring him into the tower, but Carriot and Eleanor ain't too thrilled about inviting a no-talent in here. But Tsue finds this intriguing and Eleanor says she doesn't want any more weaklings hanging around her. Tsue tells her and Carriot they're being too rigid, and he says he even invited dwarfs to the tower if they're a badass fighter. Eleanor gets all heated because elves and dwarves don't exactly mix well, and she wonders how a dude like Tsue even made it as a Magiavander. Carriot cuts off their squabbling and says there's no need to rush things. The Grand Magic Festival's almost here, and they can make a decision then. Tsue agrees, saying talented folks should be able to make their way to the top of the tower on their own. If they can't, it means they ain't got the talent in the first place. He bounces because the meeting's over and the others follow suit. Elfaria is the last one left and Iris tells her that the boy she mentioned is freaking amazing. Elfaria holds the magic core collected by Willie, and she says that she'll be waiting for him. As part of the next test, the students gotta participate in, they are all set to fight against golems. If you take one down, you pass. Then we see Chien and Kali are up first, and they both smash their golems like it's nothing. Meanwhile, Willie's struggling against his golem. Willie tries running behind the golem to land a solid punch, but as the students see him about to attack with his fists, they start clowning him for not using magic. This throws him off long enough for the golem to backhand him across the room. The students start leaving satisfied with Willie's failure against his golem. But on the other end of the room, a few students are having no trouble with the golems at all. They're Lehana and Wignall, and they both pass without a doubt. Then another student walks up and starts casting ice magic. With a wave of his wand, he sends icicle shards into all the golems, encasing them in solid blocks of ice. This is Julius, one of the top 3 students of the academy, along with the other 2. Lehana gives props to Wignall and Julius for keeping up with her and not slacking off. Julius says he wants to declare a friendly war on them and will use his newly mastered ultimate technique to deliver their defeat when the time comes. As a token of his sincerity, he offers an ice rose to them, but neither Wignall nor Lehana seem amused. Wignall, though, seems kinda excited for a showdown with Julius. These 3 are basically celebs at the school, each earning over 10,000 of the total 12,000 credits. Some think credits reflect a mage's power level, but Willie, he's nowhere near that. Right now, he doesn't even have enough credits to graduate in the first place, and this is his final year in the school. As Willie sits there, wondering what he's gonna do, Julius and his crew roll up and start trash-talking his lack of magic ability. Willie just steps aside to avoid trouble. As they leave, he hears them talking about the Grand Magic Festival, and he hadn't realized it was that time of year already. Later that day during lunch, Kali rolls up to Willie and tells him his only shot at becoming a Magiavander is to get noticed at the Magic Festival. Just trying to graduate based on his praxis and writing ain't gonna cut it, and there have been cases of students who got scouted without even having the 7,000 credits needed to graduate. The Magic Festival is a massive event that goes down every 2 years. It's packed with all kinds of events and pulls in high mages from the tower looking to scout out fresh talent. It's where all the different magic factions throw down for the chance to recruit the best students. It's no stretch to say that getting into the Upper Institute can pretty much hinge on how you do at the festival. There are 5 factions: the Thunder faction, the Elf faction, the Fire faction, the Ice faction, and Mysterious Noah. All these factions, except for Mysterious Noah, are led by their respective Magiavanders, so if they scout you, it's a guaranteed promotion. Willie doesn't think he's got a shot at getting chosen since he's already failing. To even get noticed, he'd need some kinda amazing magic that would blow the high mages away. And while he's right about that, there are still other ways to get scouted. Kali has heard rumors that Watchers might show up looking for talent, but Willie figures Watchers are just a fairy tale. He thinks that no talent like him's got no business at the festival, so he's planning to stay in the background and help with the preparations instead. Kali believes Willie could totally change how people see him if he entered the festival this year and showed what he's got, but Willie's still not into the idea. He thinks it'd just turn into a physical challenge if he's there. He tried entering the festival back in his second year and got booed off the stage for using physical attacks. He's still reeling from that embarrassment, so he's not keen on doing it again. Students all over the school are grinding hard for the festival, and Kali reminds Willie that besides the high mages, there will be plenty of scouts from the capital too. Even if Willie can't make it as a Mangiavander, he might still get scouted for another job. The Magic Festival is a prime spot to show off your skills, so Kali's really pushing Willie to step up and prove himself. But Willie's still doubtful about participating if he can't use magic. Just then, Kali spots something sketchy and heads over to one of the lockers, telling Willie there's something off about it. It's hidden pretty well, but she can sense a barrier there. Willie asks if she's sure it's not just a locking spell for the locker, but Kali can tell the barrier is made to block sound and obstruct sight. She could crack it with her magic, but that might be troublesome, so she asks Kiki to take care of it instead. Once Kiki breaks the barrier, they find a secret staircase behind the lockers that leads to an underground gambling den. A bunch of students are down there betting on who'll come out on top the Magic Festival. Kali finds it messed up that the students turned their locker room into an illegal gambling ring, but then Willie notices Chien standing across from them. He's surprised to see him there since Chien doesn't seem like the type who enjoys betting. Chien gets defensive and starts yelling at Willie to mind his own business, but Kali steps in and warns Chien that if he starts a fight with Willie for no reason, she'll make sure he regrets it. Chien backs off, so Willie asks him again what he's doing here since he's not part of the betting crowd. Chien doesn't feel the need to answer Willie's questions, but it's definitely not like he's here to see if people are betting on him. And he definitely isn't upset that no one thinks he has a chance of winning, even though he's the fourth best student in the school. Sure, the top 3 students might have slightly more credits than him, but Chien's credit score is in the high 9,000s. The only reason he ranks lower is because he failed a writing test once. Since then, he's been working a lot harder to make up for the lost credits and catch up. But his magic skills are still on par with Lehana and the others, so he's just as likely to win at the festival as any of them, although he doesn't get why he's trying to justify himself to Willie. After that, the rest of the day goes on like usual. Once classes are over, Willie gets up to leave. But before he goes, then Kali catches him and asks if he's free after school because she'd love to hang out even if it's just going into the dungeon together. But unfortunately, Willie's got work tonight, so he can't hang with her today. Willie's working in Jenna's restaurant on the outskirts of town, hustling as a waiter. He's got a tray full of food and drinks, which he brings over to Donnan. Donnan's feeling bad for Willie. Dude's juggling a crazy schedule. Willie's at the crack of dawn delivering newspapers, spends his days in classes, and then wraps up his day working at Jenna's spot. It's a tough life, but Willie's got him a choice. He didn't score the school scholarship, so he's got to foot the bill himself. Donnan mentions he heard the Grand Magic Festival is coming up soon and throws out the idea that Willie could participate. Willie's not having it, though he's not down for another round of public humiliation. Then Gina from the kitchen shouts at Willie to get back to work and calls out how Rosty's busting his ass harder than he is. Rosty's also working as a waiter tonight, but he's only doing it as a favor for Willie. It's a madhouse tonight since one of Gina's workers bailed, and all that extra work is going to pile up on Willie unless Gina hires someone else soon. When the dinner rush dies down, Willie and Rosty are elbow deep in dishes. Rosty asks Willie if he's really cool with working here because the pay from the dwarves isn't exactly top-notch. Willie could easily hit up Wagner to help him find a better-paying job, but he doesn't want to bother Wagner too much. Plus, he actually enjoys working here. The people are real, caring, and they treat him well, so Willie respects them a lot. Just when things are going smoothly, Julius rolls into the restaurant clearly just to be a jerk. The minute he walks in, he starts raving about the restaurant and the dwarves working there. Julius spots Willie and can't help but laugh, making nasty remarks about how a loser like Willie is only fit to hang out with barbarians like dwarves. This ticks Donnan off, but the other dwarves hold him back. There's no way they can afford a clash with a mage. Julius goes on, threatening Donnan not to pull any funny business. He then tells Donnan and the other dwarves that they're just immigrants who ended up here after the Celestials wrecked their world. According to Julius, humans have been nice enough to let them live here without any hassle, so a dwarf like Donnan has no right to give him any attitude. Donnan manages to chill out because he knows there's nothing he can do right now. Everything Julius spat about dwarves being refugees is true. They came here after their world got wrecked. But even though the elves went through the same thing, dwarves still get treated like trash by the humans around here. So if Donnan were to snap and go after Julius, it'd mean big trouble for all the dwarves in the city. That's just how things roll in this world, but Willie can't stand this kind of injustice. He decides today's gonna be his last shift here. Now that he's done working at Gina's place, he's free to do whatever he wants without Gina getting any blowback. First thing on his list, march over to Julius's table and tell him to take back the crap he said about the dwarves. Dwarves bust their butts and made the best of tough situations, so Julius has zero right to call them barbarians. Julius, however, couldn't care less about the dwarves or their struggles. He just kicks his plate of food at Willy and signals his two lackeys to get up and rough him up. They don't realize that tossing a plate counts as assault, so anything Willy does from now on is totally self-defense. Willy grabs the two guys by their shirts and introduces them to the floor in a major way. Julius catches a slice of the action and ends up getting his clothes pissed, which is a major hit to his pride. He's not about to let Willy get away with this. Things start to get icy as Julius pulls out his wand and goes on the attack. Willy has to dodge Julius's ice spells, but without his sword and trapped in a tight space, Julius eventually corners him with ice and pins him to the wall. Julius strides up, ready to freeze Willy solid, while Roasty's on edge, almost ready to jump in and save him. But Julius wants to see Willy beg for his life before he makes his move. Willy's eyes, though, show no fear, so Julius decides to switch things up. Instead of freezing Willy here, he's going to save the humiliation for the Magic Festival. He wants to make Willy look bad in front of the whole school. Willy agrees to face off with Julius at the festival, and Julius throws down the gauntlet. If he wins, Willy's out of school for good. But if Willy wins, he wants an apology from Julius for dissing all the dwarves. The day of the Grand Magic Festival finally arrives, and you can feel the buzz in the air. Everyone's hyped to see what these students are capable of. The Fire Faction Scout is on edge, telling his crew to keep an eye out for a rising star, because you never know who might have what it takes to become a Magiavander. The first big showdown is the Dragon Races, and Kali is absolutely killing it, leading the pack like it's nothing. But it's not just the race that's got people talking. The crowd is glued to the action, and there's a bunch of recruiters here too, both from the tower and beyond, all hungry to snag the top talent the school has to offer. Kali takes the win in record time as expected. And next up is Crown Attack, and it looks like Chan's getting in on the action. He's feeling pretty good, especially since Kali personally asked him to join her team. Finally, she's seen how awesome he is and wants to team up. No more dealing with that scrub, Willy. But just as Shin steps into the training room, he's floored to find Willy there too. Kali quickly clears things up, explaining that she needs both Chien and Willy on her team because Willy's credit score is so pathetically low that they need Chien's high score just to qualify for Crown Attack. Willy, trying to be nice, apologizes for driving Chien into his mess, but Chien isn't buying it. Why should he help Willy? And why is Willy even trying to jump into a high-level event like Crown Attack all of a sudden? While Chien is tearing into Willy, he notices that Willy isn't even paying attention to him. Instead, Willy's got his eyes locked on Julius, totally ignoring Chien's rant. Kali steps in, explaining that something went down between Julius and Willy, making Willy determined to compete in Crown Attack no matter what. This only fuels Chien's anger. How dare Willy ignore him after making him feel like such a loser in the dungeon? As the next event is about to kick off, the commentator Mike introduces himself, alongside his co-commentator Edward. Now Mike isn't thrilled about it because Edward's basically the most hated professor on campus, strict, scary, and just downright intimidating. Honestly, Mike's half convinced Edward might take him out before the festival's over, but hey, the show must go on. So Mike gets the crowd hyped for the main event of the day, the Crown Attack. Then a spell is cast over the stadium, transforming it into an epic battle map. There's a volcano zone, a marshland zone, a badlands zone, a grassland zone, and a wood zone. Unlike the other events, the Crown Attack is a team showdown, with squads of 3 competing against each other. All the teams start on the outer edge of the field, fighting their way to the central stadium. In the middle of the stadium sits a giant crown, and the first team to grab it wins. But don't think it's that easy. The entire field is rigged with traps of every kind. Teams can take the shortest path to the stadium, but they can also mess with the other teams along the way, so this is going to be the most intense battle royale of the festival. Edward chimes in, reminding everyone that the event was designed as a practical test of how well teams can handle a dungeon raid together. But let's be real, nobody's here for teamwork. They're all here to see the top students go head-to-head. And if by chance there were an illegal gambling ring at the school, which of course there totally isn't, Wignall's team would be the top bet. Meanwhile, on the other end of the betting spectrum, the team with the least love is the one led by Willy. The students start laughing at Willy for daring to think he could compete in an event like the Crown Attack, but Willy isn't losing confidence this time. As the participants head to their designated start locations, Wagner is shocked to see that Willy is serious about competing. He tries talking Willy out of it, but Willy's mind was made up from the beginning, so nothing Wagner says can stop him. Willy apologizes for not listening to Wagner, but even if it makes him the laughingstock of the school, this is one competition he's determined to win, no matter what. Willy then walks away, and Wagner accepts that there's no talking Willy out of this. He reminds Willy that he was warned about the risk involved, so if things go south, Willy has no one to blame but himself. With all the students in position, the Crown Attack event officially begins. The students rush forward, and Julius's team is the first to run into some of the traps laid out on the battlefield. As they approach, the cubes activate and form an army of golems standing in Julius's way. With so many golems in one place, it would easily become an insurmountable obstacle for many students. However, Willie charges forward at full speed, showing no signs of slowing down. The students mock him for trying to break through the golem swarm when he can't use magic and couldn't even beat a single golem during practice. But Willie keeps running toward the golems, and before he attacks, he signals to Kali, who casts a spell to create a magic gauntlet for him. With it, Willie absolutely demolishes all the golems in his path. The jaws of all the spectators drop as they witness Willie's capabilities, but Wagner had expected something like this to happen. As long as Willie attacks using a magic gauntlet, he can do significant damage, even without his sword. And since Kali made the gauntlet, it's technically not against the rules either. Against every prediction and all the illegal betting odds, Willie is the first to successfully make it through the golem horde, and he's heading straight for the crown now. Ever since Willie saved him, Chin's been haunted by that moment, replaying it in his mind on a loop. To him, it was one of his worst failures, and honestly, he'd rather have died than face that kind of humiliation. That's why he's been busting his ass to get stronger, pushing his body to the limit with every ounce of strength he can muster. But despite all his effort, Willie's still outclassing him, even without magic. Now in the crown attack, Willie and his crew have taken a massive lead, with the goal of reaching the stadium and snagging the crown. If the other competitors don't step it up, they're gonna be left eating dust. Willie hits the Badlands zone, and as soon as he arrives, more cube traps activate, firing rock bullets at him and his team. As the bullets rain down, Willie doesn't even flinch. He slams his gauntlet into the ground, creating a rock wall that blocks the bullets. Then, without missing a beat, he leaps forward and calls for Kali's help again. She casts a spell, summoning a dozen swords for Willie, which he uses like a pro, launching them as projectiles to obliterate the cubes in his path. Mike's hyped as he announces that Willie's team has breezed through the Badlands without breaking a sweat. Their teamwork is on point, though let's be real, Sheen hasn't exactly been pulling his weight. The haters in the crowd, the ones who bet against Willie, try to downplay his skills, saying Kali's magic is doing all the work. Sure, her magic plays a role, but let's not forget, it's Willie's technique that makes those weapons lethal. Even the scouts are starting to take note of Willie's insane ability to detect and counter traps. And as much as Edward might not want to admit it, even he has to respect Willie's grind. All those hours Willie spent in the dungeons have honed his movements to near perfection, and his reflexes are so sharp he can exploit the tiniest openings. Meanwhile, one of the other teams, too caught up in their hate for Willie, ends up falling right into a flower trap and gets eaten alive. The other teams are struggling with the same traps along the path, but despite all the brutal obstacles, Willie and his team are still holding the lead. The tournament events are causing a huge stir at the stadium, so much so that even Julius, who's not even nearby, can hear the commotion. Curious, he asks his teammates for an update on the event's progress. They quickly cast a detect spell to check on the competition. Turns out, Willie is way out in front with a massive lead. Julius's team knows they need to act fast or Julius might actually lose. But Julius doesn't seem too fazed. He's already got a plan in mind to deal with Willie personally. Meanwhile, Willie and his crew have just reached the final area before the arena, Enchanted Woods. Willie is leading the charge and triggers a bunch of magic circles all at once and quickly realizes he's caught in a chain circle trap. But Willie's not sweating it. He's already got the perfect counter up his sleeve. If all these spells are about to go off together, he'll just make them take each other out. He starts carving around each magic circle, adding a twist to them, and sure enough, he gets the spells to fire at each other and explode. Mike excitedly announces that Willie has breezed through the forest traps like it was nothing. He can't resist poking at Edward, asking if he has any thoughts since Edward was the mastermind behind that dark magic minefield. But Edward just clicks his tongue, clearly annoyed that Willie managed to slip through his trap so easily. Despite all the momentum Willie's built up with his massive lead, the closer he gets to the stadium, the more likely it is he'll run into another team looking to take him down. He's already taken out a couple of teams, but there's one team he's got his sights on. Willie plans to rush ahead and set up an ambush for Julius. But as he's making his way to secure the high ground, the tables turn on him as out of nowhere Julius hits him with an icicle. Willie's fine, the shot didn't hit him directly, but he's baffled. How the hell did Julius get here so fast after the huge lead they had? And the fact that Julius is alone only makes things worse. Willie's now on high alert, knowing Julius's teammates could be lurking, ready to spring a trap of their own. Julius starts launching a barrage of icicles at Willie, leaving Willie no choice but to bail for now. He knows he needs to get serious and take Julius down. But then Chien decides it's time to turn up the heat, literally. He starts casting an insanely powerful Inferno spell, but Kali notices that Chien's got his eyes locked on Willie a little too much and warns him that Chien might be aiming for him. As Qian unleashes the spell, Kali quickly throws up a rock wall in front of Willy to keep him from getting roasted. The blast sends a massive shockwave across the battlefield, leaving Willy momentarily dazed. When he snaps back to reality, he realizes the forest around them has been completely torched. Qian strolls up to him, casually saying that Julius was in the way. He might have taken Julius out too, but Kali's sure Qian fired that spell with one target in mind, killing Willy. Kali demands to know what Qian thinks he's doing, but Qian feels totally justified. He played along with Kali's request and joined their team just so Willy could enter the event. Now he wants that favor repaid with a one-on-one showdown. Willy's baffled, asking why Qian suddenly wants to fight and why right now of all times. But Qian isn't in the mood to explain. He just fires a warning shot at Willy. Kali tries to step in and stop the madness, but before she can, Julius is somehow still alive after that fiery blast and blocks her with a wall of ice. With Kali in trouble, Willy wants to rush to help her, but Qian's not letting him go anywhere until he gets the fight he's itching for. He blasts some fireballs at Willy, knocking his sword out of his hand. Willy tries to talk some sense into Qian, suggesting they settle this another time, but Qian's having none of it. He demands Willy pick up his sword for a duel, and with no other choice, Willy agrees to face him. Many years ago, when Willy and Qian first started their student life at the academy, Willy was the most pitiful, pathetic kid you could find. He was a magnet for bullies who stuck notes on his back labeling him as worthless. Qian couldn't stand the sight of it and decided to step in, albeit in his own twisted way. He burned the note, then told Willy that he'd graciously allow him to become his underling so he wouldn't have to feel alone and useless all the time. But Willy, with a blank stare, simply ignored him and walked away, which pissed Qian off to no end. Even then, Qian followed him, shaking him and demanding an answer. Willy, his eyes empty and devoid of any spark, told him to let go, and Qian begrudgingly obeyed. As Willy walked away after hurting Qian's ego, Qian's feelings turned to hatred. Now he unleashes his rage, attacking Willy with fire spells that scorch the forest. Willy runs, dodging and hiding behind trees, but Qian's relentless attacks track him down, forcing him out into the open. Qian lashes out with a fire whip, and as Willy tries to fend it off, another whip snaps from behind, grabbing his leg. Just as he cuts through the whip to free himself, Qian hurls another powerful spell at him. Willy manages to block it, but his sword starts glowing red-hot from the heat. Qian curses him, sneering, "Are you just going to jump around to survive, or do you plan on fighting back?" Willy, still unwilling to fight his teammate, insists, "We're on the same team. I don't have time to fight you right now, I'm focused on the competition." Qian snaps and tells Willy that he will just burn him to ashes and continues his assault. As Willy dodges everything thrown at him, he can't help but wonder if he really has no choice but to fight against his own teammate. Everyone in the stadium is completely floored by what they're seeing. Even Edward, with a smug grin, points out that no matter the reason, infighting among teammates is the absolute worst move in this competition. He mentions that because of this shit, the Tower Scouts will undoubtedly mark both Willy and Qian negatively, and he looks weirdly happy about it. The Scouts had seen some promise in Qian up until now, but after witnessing this fiasco, they decided he's unfit for recruitment. Meanwhile, Willy's roommate Roasty is killing himself with worry when suddenly Iris appears and asks if she can sit next to him. They've crossed paths before, and Rusty can hardly believe it when Iris starts cheering for Willy. She admits that she wasn't interested in him at first, despite a reliable source hyping him up, but after watching him in action, she's become his biggest fan. On the other side of the battlefield, Kali is desperately trying to evade Julius while searching for a way to reach Willy and Qian. Julius mocks her, asking if the so-called Earth Princess is really not going to fight back. Kali hates that nickname with a passion and snaps at him to stop calling her that. He responds by launching an ice attack, which she blocks with a stone wall. But then she noticed a magic circle forming beneath her feet, and she realized that she walked right into a trap. Then a massive blast of dark magic hits her point blank, leaving the audience in shock. But what really blows everyone's minds is that Julius appears on every screen, facing off against all the teams at once, and nobody can make sense of how he's seemingly everywhere at once. Julius even makes his way over to Wignall's team, reminding Wignall that he swore to crush everyone with his secret weapon. Wignall responds with a spell Julius knows all too well, an ice flower that he had once given him. As the flower distracts Julius, a magic circle forms beneath him, and suddenly, he's swallowed up by a tornado. But then it's revealed that this Julius was nothing more than a clone, crafted from ice and magic stones, which is obliterated by Wignall's attack. Everyone is in awe of Wignall's performance, but Philvis, one of the leaders of the elf faction, isn't impressed. To her, Wignall is just average, barely meeting their standards. She turns to her partner Lefia and asks to return to their base, complaining that as an introvert, the festival's lively atmosphere feels like a slow, painful poison. Lefia, however, refuses, reminding her that they must watch the entire festival and report back to their master, the elf Magiavander. Meanwhile, the audience is buzzing, unsure who will take the win now. They thought that Willy's team would win it, but Shen's sabotage has thrown everything into chaos. Willy's classmates are baffled by Shen's actions, and even Willy himself can't figure out why the redhead is so obsessed with him. He recalls the days when everyone bullied him, disrupting his work just for laughs. It was a rough time because no one knew better than him that he was a failure, but he couldn't understand why they went out of their way to torment him. Numbed by the constant harassment, all he wanted was to be left alone. So when Shen approached him that day, all he could say was, "Let me go." He didn't grasp Shen's intentions, nor did he care. His focus was solely on reaching Elferia. On that day, when Willy ignored him, Shen had lashed out with a fireball in frustration. Now here he was again, attacking Willy in the same way. Willy dodges his attacks, opting to run instead. Shen, not backing down, chants a high-level magic spell and conjures a flamed falcon, his guardian. Willy is shocked not just by the sight of it, but even more so when Shen commands the falcon to attack. Guardians are usually defensive, meant to buy time, not go on the offensive. Reacting quickly, Willy uses his sword as a platform to leap into the air, slicing off one of the falcon's wings in the process. He grabs his sword and rushes towards Shen, thinking this is his chance to end the fight. But the flame falcon quickly regenerates its wing and resumes its pursuit. Willy realizes he has to destroy the falcon's core to stop it, but that's easier said than done with the guardian shooting fire at him. He dodges the flames, only for Shen to attack from another direction. Willy blocks with his magic gauntlet, but is pushed back, clearly exhausted. But Shen isn't looking much better either. Everyone, including Edward, is blown away by Shen's unexpected performance, because commanding a guardian with such skill shows that he's way beyond your average student. Even the Fire faction scouts are intrigued, despite Shen's betrayal of his team. According to their data, Shen wasn't supposed to be on the same level as the top 3 students in this batch, but today's display has everyone rethinking that assessment. The scout leader is convinced that something must have pushed Shen to break through his limits, and he decides to report this to Flame Magiavander immediately. On the battlefield, Willy is down on his knees, realizing just how much stronger Shen has become. Shen taunts him, asking if this is really all he's got, reminding him that he was much stronger when he fought the giant monster. Willy, desperate to understand, asks why Shen is doing all of this. They have no reason to fight each other. Shen snaps and demands how Willy can say that after everything that's happened between them. He accuses Willy of having no anger, no hatred, even after all the bullying he's endured over the years. Willy admits that he's angry and that he does hate Shen, but he insists that right now, their priority should be defeating Julius. The mention of Julius sends Shen into a rage, cursing Willy for always focusing on everything and everyone except him. He tells Willy to stop ignoring him, and in that moment, Willy finally understands. He realizes that Shen, in his own twisted way, has acknowledged him and now desperately wants to be acknowledged in return. Willy puts on his action glasses and takes a stance determined to honor Shen's feelings by giving him everything he's got. Shen, seeing Willy finally taking him seriously, is thrilled, so he begins chanting his most powerful spell with the flame falcon guarding him. Willy knows he can't get through his attack with any weak-ass attacks, so he decides to watch Shen, closely timing his spell and preparing for the perfect moment to launch his counterattack. But suddenly, Shen unleashes his guardian to attack as he shoots a barrage of fireballs that light up the battlefield. Willy's eyes widen at the sheer scale of the attack, but he quickly zeroes in on the path of the fireballs. With a burst of speed, he weaves through the onslaught like it's child's play, emerging from the flames to deliver a precise slash to the flame falcon's core before heading to Shen. Shen then attacks him with another attack point blank, but just as their attacks are about to collide, a stone wall erupts between them, halting the fight in its tracks. Willy smacks right into the wall, and Shen, caught off guard, stumbles back as Kali steps onto the scene and demands they stop fighting. Her clothes in tatters from her battle with Julius, and she proudly announces that she kicked Julius' ass, but that he pulled a vanishing act. Shen, caught off guard, stammers something about decency, blushing as he scolds Kali for her disheveled appearance. She isn't having any of it, calling him a misogynistic pig for judging her by her clothes and reminding him that the whole mess is his fault for starting the fight in the first place. She then tells Willy to get moving because he's got unfinished business with Julius, and she'll handle things here. Shen, still riled up, declares he won't let her interfere with his battle, but Kali snaps back, calling him selfish and stupid. Then suddenly, Willy drapes his robe over her shoulders, thanking her with a sincerity that leaves her blushing furiously. Willy then picks up his sword and takes off, telling Shen they'll settle the score some other time. Meanwhile, Julius and his team are the first to enter the stadium. The host is already declaring them the unbeatable champions when suddenly, Willy rockets into the stadium at breakneck speed. landing with a thunderous crash right behind Julius and his crew, leaving the entire crowd eyes wide in disbelief. Willie locks eyes with Julius and challenges him to a fight, and Julius, who's been itching for this showdown, smirks as he prepares for the battle he's been waiting for. The scene then shifts to Elfaria lounging in her room at the top of the tower when a woman named Sarissa storms in to talk to her. Sarissa quickly notices that Elfaria is actually dozing off and doesn't hesitate to wake her up with a smack to the head, and tells her to act with the dignity befitting her status, and points out that Elfaria is always either napping or daydreaming at the bottom of the tower. Then, with a groggy irritation, Elfaria asks Sarissa what she wants. Sarissa hands her a stack of papers, insisting she take a moment to review them. These are the candidates recommended by the scouts, and Sarissa mentions with satisfaction that they've got a good crop this year. She highlights Julius in particular, noting that he's an excellent fit for the Ice faction and currently putting on a show in the games. Sarissa suggests he might even be worthy of becoming Elfaria's successor. Elfaria considers that Sarissa might be right if the information about Julius is really accurate. The scene then shifts to Willie gearing up to face off against Julius in the games. Mike, the ever-enthusiastic announcer that Willie is up against all three members of Squad 9, and Julius, with a smug grin, expresses his relief that Willie showed up on time. He admits he was worried he'd win by default, then adds with a smirk that it wouldn't have been as satisfying if he couldn't crush him with some public humiliation. Willie, not backing down, tells Julius he's not planning on losing until he makes him apologize to Donnan and the others. But Julius, with a sneer, dismisses Willie as all talk and no action, saying he's nothing more than a rat. Then, with a flourish, Julius starts showing off his ice magic, creating a thick mist that quickly envelops the arena. Willie, on high alert, tries to sense the magical presence of the others through the smokescreen. He wonders if they're planning to launch spells at him and quickly realizes they're moving around him, likely attempting to encircle him. Then suddenly an ice spell strikes Willie from behind, but Willie narrowly dodges it. Knowing he can't stay in one place, he begins to move, managing to evade two more similar ice attacks. Believing he has now pinpointed their locations, Willie attempts to strike at Julius, but just as he makes his move, he's blindsided by yet another ice attack from an unexpected direction. Willie is caught off guard by the sudden turn of events, and Julius, with a smug grin, reveals that neither he nor his team has moved an inch. The realization hits Willie like a ton of bricks. What he's been tracking were mere clones, and the entire arena is left in shock as 5 versions of Julius stand before them. Willie briefly wonders if it's some kind of illusion, but quickly realizes it's not. Julius then explains with a wicked laugh that his clones aren't just for show, they can explode. And then boom, the clone closest to Willie explodes, and while Willie manages to shield himself from the worst of the blast, he finds himself trapped in a block of ice. Even Edward is stunned by the sight of 4 identical Juliuses, and he's taken aback when he realizes the spell being used. Wagner then identifies the spell as one of Elfaria's secret creations, part of a legendary serial magic known as El Glace Frost. Wagner goes on to explain that Elfaria's genius lies in the 12 original spells she crafted, each one a masterpiece in its own right, and Julius is wielding one of these spells called Ars Weiss. Willie recognizes the spell immediately. It's one that creates living sculptures, perfect replicas of the caster. Willie is in disbelief and demands to know how Julius could possibly use the same magic as Elfaria. Julius just laughs, arrogance dripping from every word as he claims it's all thanks to his immense talent. He boasts about mastering the spell on his own, and while it might be just the first in the series, he brags that he's already reached the level of a Mangiavander. With a sneer, he dismisses Elfaria as nothing special, even going so far as to declare that one day he'll strip her of everything she has. Willie's anger flares at this insult, and he shatters the ice, imprisoning him, and charges straight at Julius. So Julius and his clones respond with a barrage of ice boulders, but Willie cuts through them with ease. As Julius continues to cast spells, he boasts that he can move his clones at will and even have them cast spells independently. Julius's teammates then confidently remark that Willie is bound to lose if he stays put, and with that, Julius halts his direct attacks and uses his clones as anchors to trap Willie within a magical barrier. Willie tries to break free of the barrier, slashing at it desperately, but the barrier holds firm, leaving him trapped. Julius then with a smug explains that it's easy to hunt down a wild animal when it's on a rampage, and he then hurls a massive ice boulder at Willie, declaring that this will end the fight. The crowd in the arena is stunned by the display of power, and Mike announces that Julius has won the battle without even moving from his spot. Even Edward is in awe and comments that this level of control is the ideal for all mages, so he finally understands why Julius has over 10,000 credits. Julius then grabs his wand and uses it like a Mick, and he tells the scouts that he has mastered Elfaria's spell on his own. Then he boldly declares that he will be Elfaria's successor, leaving the students in amazement. They murmur that no one can defeat him if he can wield the magic of Mangiavander. But Iris sees through the act, and she points out that Julius has cleverly exploited Willie's monstrous strength and agility to make himself look good. She acknowledges his cunning, but Rosie says that he'll look ridiculous if he loses now. And then, against all odds, Willie shatters the ice boulder and Julius is left speechless. Willie casually thanks Julius for the ice spell, saying it helped cool his head. He even admits that he tends to get worked up when it comes to Elferia, but Julius gets irritated to hear him babbling, and he declares that he's going to put Willie down for good this time. So Julius and his clones launch another attack, but Willie deftly dodges their spells and takes out Julius's teammates in one swift move. Edward, recognizing the tactic, realizes this is the same technique Willie used against him. The crowd erupts in excitement, sensing a major upset. As Julius's ice clones begin to crumble, confusion spreads through the audience. Willie calmly explains that Julius had been relying on his friends to help control the clones, and that's the only reason he could wield Elfaria's spell for even a short time, and he adds that Julius is nowhere near Elfaria's level. Meanwhile, back at the tower, Elfaria, watching from afar, considers that Julius might indeed have the potential to be her successor if the reports are accurate, but she quietly muses that what she truly desires by her side is a sword, not a successor. Willie then points out that Julius's Ars Weiss isn't all it's cracked up to be. He explains that unlike autonomous guardians, Ars Weiss is entirely controlled by the caster, and without his teammates, Julius wouldn't have been able to keep those clones in check. Julius, enraged at being lectured by someone he considers a no-talent who can't even use magic, retaliates by launching roses at Willie. Willie easily slices through them, but Julius makes the roses explode. Willie shields himself from the blast, and Julius, not missing a beat, conjures up 4 more clones. And they bombard Willie with magic from all sides, but Willie either dodges or counters every attack. Julius admits that he's not yet skilled enough to control 4 clones simultaneously without the help of his teammates, and he knows that the spell will drain him quickly, but he remains confident that Willie will never figure out which of the clones is the real one since they all look identical. Laughing at the thought of Willie being helpless against his spell, Julius is caught off guard when Willie charges straight at him. Panicked, Julius hastily erects an ice wall to block the attack, but Willie shatters it effortlessly with his sword, sending a shard of ice flying into Julius. Julius is stunned and demands to know how Willie figured out which one was the real him. So Willie calmly explains that the average body temperature of Ars Weiss's clones is the exact opposite of the caster's, around -36 or 37 degrees Celsius, and sometimes even lower depending on the precision of the spell. If the caster isn't fully in control of the clones, the cold seeps out of them, much like Frostwalker's ice crystals from around their feet. Realizing that Willie is right, Julius watches in disbelief as all of his clones crumble to pieces. Confusion and anger swirl within him as he wonders how someone like Willie could possibly know more about this spell than he does. So Willie, with a hint of nostalgia, reveals that it's because Elfaria is his childhood friend. He shares that both he and Elfaria were abandoned and grew up in the same orphanage, and because of this, he knows her magic inside out and even admires it, though he's never been able to reach her level. Then we see Elfaria call down to Willie from the tower, reassuring him that their memories and his hard work will never go in vain. Back on the ground, Willie faces Julius and calmly tells him that he knows all the strengths and weaknesses of Elfaria's magic. Julius snaps and angrily declares that he's not about to let a no-talent like Willie mock the magic of Amandia Vander. With fury in his eyes, he attacks Willie with an ice spell, but Willie effortlessly slices right through it. He then compliments Julius, sarcastically noting how amazing it is that no other mage has ever managed to replicate Elfaria's magic before. But then Willie drops the bombshell. Ars Weiss, the spell Julius is so proud of, was created by Elfaria when she was just 2 years old. This revelation hits Julius like a knife in his ass, but Willie continues anyway and tells him that the spell isn't perfect and can be easily countered. He adds that bragging about mastering such a spell makes Julius nothing more than the proverbial naked king. Julius is now in disbelief that he had been so proud of mastering a spell created by a 2-year-old girl and feels the sting of humiliation. The realization that he's no better than an infant enrages him, and in his fury, he conjures 8 clones of himself. And then he boasts that Willie shouldn't underestimate him, as he can do much more than just create a few clones. So he is determined to overwhelm Willie with sheer numbers, and he casts a barrage of ice spells at once. But Willie remains unfazed and casually mentions that when he was a kid, he used to get bullied by 10 of Elfie's clones, making Julius's efforts look like child's play. Julius is enraged and launches his attack, but Willie dodges every spell with ease and takes down one of his clones. Julius desperately commands his remaining clones to stop Willie, so he can flee, but it's no use. Willie methodically destroys every last clone, as their attacks prove useless as he blocks or dodges them all. With the clones defeated, Willie strides toward Julius and delivers a powerful punch to his face. The blow is so strong that it knocks out one of Julius's teeth, leaving him unconscious on the ground. Everyone is stunned by what just happened, and Mike announces Willie's victory, but he is in disbelief that his so-called no talent managed to take down someone with over 10,000 credits. Rosti is left speechless, and even Lehana starts to see Willie in a new light. And as Kali and Shen enter the area, Mike declares that all Willie needs to do now is claim the crown. But just as Willie is about to reach for it, Wignall swoops in, snatches it, and places it on his own head. The crowd is left in shock, and Mike has no choice but to announce Wignall as the winner. And with that, the Grand Magic Games come to a close. Then we see Sarissa breaks the news to Elfaria, who is so ashamed that she can't even show her face. She desperately wishes for a spell that could erase memories or turn back time. Sarissa mentions that such a forbidden spell might exist, but she wouldn't allow Elfaria to use it anyway. Elfaria, with tears in her eyes, insists that Willie was wrong. She wasn't trying to bully him, she just wanted him all to herself so they could play together all the time. So she can't believe the students now know about her dark past. Meanwhile, back at the arena, Shen is floored that Willie managed to take down Julius too, so he leaves with the determination to defeat Willie someday, and then Kali checks on Willie, asking if he's okay. Willie apologizes for their loss, but he adds that at least he was able to keep his promise. That night at the tavern, the atmosphere was buzzing with joy as everyone celebrated Willie's victory over Julius. The dwarves all thanked Willie for standing up for them, while Wagner expressed his gratitude to the dwarves for looking after Willie. The dwarves modestly claimed they hadn't done much, but Wagner insisted they keep an eye on Willie anyway. Later that night, Kali couldn't hide her disappointment about Willie not getting scouted by the tower. She guessed it was because their team had been too busy fighting among themselves and hadn't even won the event. She placed the blame squarely on Shen, and Willie mentioned that Shen had rudely turned down the invitation to join their celebration. Donan reassured Willie, saying not to fret about not being scouted. After all, he had fought for their honor and secured the apology Willie had been after. And the cherry on top, Julius was stuck doing grunt work in the tavern as punishment. He obediently followed his boss's orders, but couldn't help but complain that he wouldn't get scouted now, all thanks to no-talent Willie. Frustrated, Julius threw himself into the work, trying to burn off his anger. Meanwhile, Kali noticed Wagner seemed troubled, and he confessed that things might change from here on out. Willie had shown what he was really made of during the festival, and Wagner wondered how Willie would handle things when he returned to the academy the next day. Kali optimistically assumed that the other students would finally show Willie some respect, but Wagner warned her that things might not go as expected. When they got back to school, a group of guys immediately asked Willie to join them for a dungeon run. They grudgingly admitted that Willie had insane strength and begged him to choose their team for the upcoming Praxis, a week-long dungeon dive. Before Willie could respond, another group barged in, not wanting the first group to snatch Willie away since they had planned to invite him to their team. More students joined in, and soon Willie was surrounded by requests to team up. Kali called them all shameless for suddenly wanting Willie after years of bullying him. She assumed Willie would feel the same, but she was dead wrong. Willie was thrilled to be in demand. Kali realized she'd lost her grip on him because he'd been starved for friends for too long. When one girl accused Kali of hoarding Willie all to herself and offered to split the dungeon dive credits, Kali stepped in, declaring that Willie couldn't team up with anyone because they already had plans to go shopping. That night, Kali starts freaking out after realizing she might have accidentally set herself up for a date with Willie. Her friend Rose catches on and can't help but tease her about it, but still suggests Kali get ready, even if it's not a real date. Kali reluctantly agrees, and Rose nudges her to wear something cute. Meanwhile, Willie is talking to Rosie about his plans with Kali, explaining that Kali kind of strong-armed him into it by saying they needed to buy gear for the Praxis. Rosie is happy to hear that Willie and Kali will be out shopping alone, and his face lights up like a total weirdo. The next day, Kali is anxiously waiting for Willie, determined to turn this little shopping trip into a full-blown date. Her breath catches when she sees Willie, and he immediately compliments her new look, saying she got his heart racing, which sends Kali into a bit of a panic. Just as things start to feel right, they're both caught off guard when Rosti suddenly shows up, apologizing for being late. He introduces himself to Kali, and Willie explains that Rosti insisted on tagging along. Kali is horrified at this sudden twist, while Rosti just smirks, clearly enjoying her discomfort. From that point on, Rosti seems dead set on getting in between Kali and Willie anytime she tries to talk to him. Eventually, Willie notices something's up and asks what's bothering Kali. She bluntly tells him that the way he and Rosti are all buddy-buddy is kind of weird. Willie just laughs it off, saying Rosti is a great guy who likes to stick close to his friends. Rosti, ever the troublemaker, brings over drinks but conveniently doesn't get one for himself, planning to share with Willie. Kali isn't having any of that nonsense and offers to share hers instead. Things start getting tense, and Rosti suggests that Willie go on ahead to get his sword fixed. Kali agrees, adding that the dwarves wouldn't be thrilled to see mages like them at their forge. Clueless to the tension, Willie shrugs and heads off the forge. As soon as he's out of sight, Kali cuts to the chase, demanding to know why Rosti won't just leave Willie alone for 5 minutes. Rosti doesn't back down and declares that he cares about Willie more than anyone else in the world. The two end up going head-to-head, bickering over who's actually closer to Willie. Back with Willie, he finally starts to wonder if his friends might actually hate each other. Just then, out of nowhere, Lehana swoops in to talk to him. Lehana, also known as Miss Perfect, is someone who stands way above the crowd, and a complete opposite of Willie in every sense. Willie's a bit puzzled, wondering what she could possibly want, but Lehana simply tells him to follow her. He trails behind her all the way to some mysterious house, where he finds a group of the academy's top students gathered. It's the final term of their last year, which means it's time for the all-student praxis, and Lehana drops the bombshell that she wants to form a party with the 5 of them. Julius and Shen look like they've just seen a ghost and can't fathom why Lehana would invite Willie of all people. Willie knows all too well that these two probably hate him the most. Seeing his terrified face, Lehana mistakes it for hesitation and assumes he's turning down her offer, confirming to Willie that she's a bit of an airhead. Not one to be ignored, Shen furiously charges over to confront Willie. But before he can make a scene, Wigmel flexes his powerful magic and completely changes their surroundings. He smilingly points out that mages are far from the barbaric nature of the dwarves, which shuts Shen up real quick. Wigmel's magic is no ordinary trick. It's illusion magic, a rare form that conjures up fantastical landscapes, a skill only the elves possess. As things settle down, Wigmel turns his attention back to Lehana, wanting to hear what else she has to say. Lehana then explains that her goal is simple, to form a party for the dungeon dive. She wants to team up with the 4 strongest mages and the one person who stood out the most at the festival. She believes Willie has something they lack, something that could give them an edge in the dungeon. Julius immediately disagrees, arguing that Willie can't use search magic and would just slow them down. Shen, having recently been in a party with Willie, is quick to say he doesn't want to go through that mess again. Wigmel chimes in, pointing out that Julius and Shen are just bitter about losing to Willie, but Willie still feels insulted. Wigmel spells out what they refuse to see. Willie has the brute strength of a dwarf and the agility of a beast. Sure, his fighting style might not be elegant, but his swords still manage to beat both of their wands. Julius isn't having it and snaps back that Wigmel is still trailing behind Lehana in credits. Wigmel takes this as even more reason to respect Lehana's judgment. If she sees potential in Willie, then he's willing to respect this so-called no talent. That's more than can be said for the 2 other guys, which of course gets them even more riled up. Lehana then drops her real reason. She wants to harness all their power to rise up the tower as the top student. She craves fame, honor, and a brighter future. Although she got scouted at the festival and secured a guaranteed placement after graduation, that's not nearly enough for her. In her family, members tend to die young, and to prevent their downfall, Lehana needs to produce extraordinary results. Simply climbing the tower isn't sufficient. She has to become a Magia of Vander. Confident that everyone has their own ambitions, Lehana proposes a deal. Drop a coin in a cup if they agree to her plan. Wigmel doesn't hesitate. There's no way any other team could achieve better results. Julius, desperate for more credits, reluctantly agrees, and Shen throws in his coin too, leaving Willie as the last holdout. Later that night, Willie returns to his worried friends. They had gone looking for him at the forge, but he was nowhere to be found. Looking unusually serious, Willie tells them that he has decided to join Lehana's party for the practice dungeon dive. The next day, Wagner explains that the practice run will kick off in 10 days. Floors 7 through 10 of the dungeon, which were previously off-limits, are going to be unlocked. This means students will get to face off against level 5 enemies and other high-credit monsters. It's the one chance for students to rack up over 1,000 credits in a single go, so yeah, it's a pretty big deal. But the real jackpot: if they manage to take down any of the floor keepers, they'll earn a massive amount of credits. In theory, they might even secure all their praxis credits in one fell swoop. Edward jumps in with a reality check, warning that there's also a very real chance they could lose their lives. Just last year, 4 students were eaten by monsters. He reminds everyone that playing the hero is a terrible idea and that reckless behavior is strictly forbidden. Even though professors will be stationed nearby, that hasn't stopped fatalities before. As the students head into the dungeon, Lehana makes it a point to tell Kali she was never invited. Kali shrugs it off, declaring that if Willie's going, she's going too. Rosti couldn't make it, but Willie is glad that Rosti at least geared him up with a load of magical items. The praxis is about to kick off, and students are informed that there are base camps on each floor. They're told that if the lower levels become too dangerous, they should hightail it to safety immediately. With that, the praxis officially begins, and Willie puts on his battle goggles, ready for action. Meanwhile, deeper in the dungeon, someone is given a secret mission to retrieve something. Another figure is there too, and with cold efficiency. This person gruesomely removes a person's head from their body. That's it for this video, guys. If you like this new series, leave a like for the next episode. And subscribe for more Anon content. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.